This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be considered legal, health, tax, professional advice. We're not responsible for any losses, damages, or liabilities that may arise from the use of this podcast. This podcast is not intended to replace professional medical advice. The views expressed in this podcast may not be those of the host or the management. This podcast may contain adult theme, so parental discretion is advised. So welcome, welcome, welcome. Today's guest is someone whose life story is a testament to resilience, faith, and transformation. JoBeth Evans is a speaker, certified grief recovery specialist, and a faith-driven woman who has navigated life's most challenging valleys with grace and purpose. At the age of 33, JoBeth's world was turned upside down when she tragically lost her husband in 2023. What followed was a journey through profound grief, a journey that could have broken her, but instead it became the foundation for a radically surrendered life. With God's guidance, JoBeth rebuilt her life from the ashes and answered a higher calling, helping others find hope, healing, and a renewed sense of purpose in the most, in grief and loss. Get ready for a raw, faith-filled conversation that will inspire you. So welcome, Beth. Welcome. How are
Thank
you?
you. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here and always love sharing my testimony. And my goal is always to be a source of hope and light to people who are going through some really hard stuff and always pointing people back to Christ and how he is there with us through this. So I'm excited to get into some good questions and conversation with you today.
Right. If you want to expound on anything that I said, you may do this at this point. Other than that, we go into the questions.
Yeah, I thought what you said was great. We're gonna get into the questions, so we're gonna get into like the deep stuff, but yeah, just a lot of really hard things. And the older I get, which I'm still young, I am aware of that. But the further I get in life, I just see that there's just one thing after another that we have to deal with and we have to adjust to, and we have to accept. Some things we can
Right.
change, some things we cannot. And when there are things that we can't change, that's when our faith steps in. And I just, am a testament to just staying consistent with my faith and with my relationship with God and how that has brought me into a place of light. So let's go. Let's get
Yeah.
into the
So,
questions.
so how did you process, the overwhelming grief of losing your husband at such a young age, and you have two boys, correct?
I have a little girl and a
A
boy,
little
so I have
girl, a
one of
little,
each.
yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah. So losing him honestly wasn't the hardest part. The hardest part was when he got diagnosed because we knew, that it was going to be a hard road, whether there was healing in that or not. How I processed it was just tried to, for me, it was fully understanding the diagnosis, fully understanding what role we were going to play in his healing, but also like really leaning into God because it's in those moments where like I describe it as like everything was like good, perfect, and complete in our life. And then it was like complete darkness. Like there was no future. There was no, like everything was just a question mark. Like, what would happen to our company? What would happen to his life? What would happen, like me being a single parent? So a lot of just thinking about those things. Lots of hours spent, lots and lots of days, months in the hospital, where he was, basically not fully with me. So it was in silence, a lot of time just processing, what is this going to look like? But also holding everything in life with open hands and knowing that God gives and He takes away, and understanding that it didn't matter how tightly I tried to hang on to something that ultimately it wasn't in my control. So just kind of contemplating that. It was the second time in my life where I'd been like, okay, this is not looking like the outcome I'm wanting. Um, what does that mean for me? And more importantly, what do I make of this situation? Like, I always said that the tragedy wouldn't be lost on me. I wouldn't go through this and not share with others or be open to helping others through this.
Okay. Can you share more when God's presence felt most tangible during your journey?
Yeah, there was one day in particular, a couple days, I guess. One was when I was just laying in my bathroom floor crying. Like it seemed like everything that I was wanting to happen wasn't happening. Healing wasn't happening. And I just prayed for God's peace and I just felt his presence and it's indescribable. If you felt it, you know what I'm talking about, but
Yes,
it's
I know what
something
you're
I
talking about.
can't describe it really. Um, it's like a hug and nobody's touching you, but a hug
Hmm.
that means something spiritual. It's very, very odd, but just him being there and providing that peace for me, and also finding some acceptance in that moment too. But that was one moment where it was like really, really evident that he was there, he was with me, and really felt the presence of the Holy Spirit. Another time was when my husband was like a month or two away from passing, and I was just crying out to God, like, what do I do? Like, I have tried everything. I have found him the best doctors. I have I have gotten him to those appointments. I've made sure he takes his medicine. Like I have prayed, I have fasted, I have like seeked out others to pray and fast for him and like invited our community. Like, like going through this all these things I've
That is
done.
humanly possible. Yes, I
And
understand.
I've done everything. Like I don't know what to do. And I knew God seen my heart and he saw how much I wanted him to for my husband to be able to stay. And I was just crying out to him and like, what do I do? Because I was losing it. Like I could tell this was we were nearing the end and there was not going to be any going back. And I heard very clearly from God, you've done everything that you can do, my child. Like it was like a word for me to release him, to let him go, to
Amen.
let him go, let him go be with Christ. Like, and I felt a lot of it was like a weight off my shoulders. It never was mine to carry. It never was mine to, he was never mine to save.
Yeah.
But I felt like I had a part in it. I was hoping that my faith would save him. And that's not what happened, which we'll get to those questions later. But like in those moments where God was just like, hey, you've done everything you can do, it's just like, okay, like and there was a feeling of peace with that too, and permission to let things happen.
Yes. And from my experience, I know that especially when people are traveling, their thoughts on you. I mean, that he's thinking about how are you gonna cope? I can't leave her. And sometimes we have to in our own take away our selfishness and tell the person that
Hmm.
it's okay. It's
Yeah.
okay. It's okay. I had that experience, and I know the person didn't, was fighting just just to make sure that they were there for me.
Hmm.
And I just have to say, well, you can go. I'll be fine,
Hmm.
Just give them the permission. So it's what I'm saying is you're having a battle, and the person who's trying to pass is having a battle,
Right.
between leaving you and all of that.
Yeah.
So how did you navigate the new norm for you? Because everything has changed. It's no longer there. You're gonna be the decision maker. You're gonna be it.
Hmm.
So how did you navigate the new norm after such a significant loss? How did you navigate that?
I gave myself a lot of grace and a lot of space and a lot of permission to grieve and permission to put myself first. And I think that's something that, is not in Christianity. Like we're not supposed to put, we're supposed to put others before ourselves, like, God first, others second, me third, kind of a thing.
Yeah, yes.
But and while I think that is true, like I'm not debating that. But sometimes what that looks like when you're in charge of other people is like taking care of others by taking care of yourself. And I put a lot of effort into taking care of myself. I made sure that I was doing everything that I knew to be helpful in grieving. I was doing those things. I was taking time to cry. I cleared my schedule as much as I could. Like I wanted to create space. And sometimes that was doable and sometimes it was not because we had two kids and a farm and a business and I was working for the University of Arkansas and we were actually homeschooling at the time. And so it was like, And we had another company too, my dad, my sister, and myself. And I had to create space. And so I knew how valuable those first few months, that first year was. Like everybody says it's the hardest year. And there are cases where that's true, and there's cases where that's not. Like having worked with people now, I see that sometimes year 5 is the hardest if you're not taking appropriate steps towards healing. But I gave myself permission. I hired a therapist who like worked as a therapist and a grief coach, and I worked really closely with her. And I say worked because I treated my recovery like a job, like a business. Um, I was like, these are the steps we're going to take, and these are the things I know to be good. I know it is good if we have routine. I know it's good if we have somebody that's done this before us to help us walk through this. I know that it's important for me and the kids to be really close. I know it's really important for us to connect with God, the Bible, in worship, in the car, in the kitchen. Like, I knew there were things that were going to help make us okay. And I really like turned to that and turned to it hard. This experience also made me very curious about God because had experienced him in this situation differently than what I had been taught growing up. And so that was a lot of confusion, but it made me so hungry for God's word. And I think it was also in that time period where the Bible became less of a history book and a guidebook to really the living word. I think that was the time that it really came to life for me. Um, and so that's how I handled it. And then, there's the whole like business and farm and all that stuff that was happening too. And I had a lot of help too. I had family and friends that really came in and surrounded and supported and helped me get back up on my feet. And I couldn't have done it without them. Like it was too much. It was a lot for my husband and I, way too much for the both of us, or just for me.
I like what you said about the Bible. I yes, initially when I used to read the Bible, it's just like a historical book. But when I really, really went through my trials and tribulation and really, didn't have anything else to hold on to
Mhm.
other than God's word, I found that it's a living, it's living, it's breathing, it's changing. Sometimes when
Mhm.
I read a verse, it means one thing to me, and when I read it again, it's like it's changed. It means something different.
Yeah.
So yes, that is such a profound statement that is so true. And it's something persons have to experience themselves. It's hard for you to describe it to them. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
So what does radically surrendering your life means to you?
It's holding, and I mentioned it earlier, but holding everything with open hands. And I it was losing my husband, and I also went through infertility, and it was kind of like a little a little test run into grief before I lost my husband. Like it was two different levels of grief for me, very different, but um I learned that even though I'm here and I get to participate and I have free will and I know God wants good for me and all that, I know that everything can change in a second. And that really the things that I really hold tight to can be gone tomorrow. They could be gone all right now, and I just don't know about it yet. Like, and that is the radical for me. If there was a vision of it, it's sitting there with your hands open, right? Like, here's everything. Like surrendering everything to God. I'm like everything, my health, my grief journey, my businesses, like God, I want what you want, because like wanting what I want is too painful. So I want what you want for me. I want like I lay myself at your feet. I lay my kids at your feet. Like here's everything that I have, because like I thought I knew what was best for me, because we do in our humanness in the flesh. We know what's best for
Right.
us. Um but what I learned through this experience is like I really know nothing. But here's one thing
Yes,
I
it's
do know.
true.
What I do know is that God is good. We serve a God that is unconditionally good to us. He loves us. And yes, he took my husband. Um that was, I mean, very tragic. It was very terrible. You may look at me today and hear me talking. You're like, this lady's not even like emotionally affected by it. I am. It was the worst that I think I could like imagine. But at the same time, I just realized that like I have to trust in God. And I talk a lot about how I feel like as Christians we give ourselves choices, like to like, do we want to walk away from God during this time or do we not? Or do we want to be angry at God or do we not? Like, we think we have like all these options. And I think we shouldn't give ourselves so many options. And I was committed from the beginning. Like, I knew I was probably going to lose my husband. I didn't want to lose God in the process. That was really important to me. The two most important men in my life. I'm going to keep the one that I know without doubt is not going to leave me, is never going to leave me. And so that has been really, really important, just remaining steadfast in the suffering.
You know, I believe I believe God likes when we ask him questions and question him. I think God likes us to question him. Um, when you look at, uh, I think God likes when you question him because it gives him an opportunity to speak to your heart and let you know that he's in control. Because I remember I went through the same process of asking God, why he took this person from me. There were people out there trying to commit suicide. There were people, overdosing themselves. And you have such a good person here, and you took that person, and all those persons who want to kill themselves and, mistreating their body are still here. But what I heard, a small voice saying to me, he was never yours. He was never yours to keep. He always belonged to me. So I can give him and I can give and I can take. That's what and from after that, I never questioned. But it was hard because, as I said before, you see people out there doing things to kill
Hmm.
themselves and they're still here.
Right.
And this other person here who was doing so much good to others have gone.
Yeah.
But it's a journey. It's a journey, and as I said before, I don't think God is going to fault us if we question Him. I think he wants us to question because He's going to give us the answer in some shape or form. We're going to get the answer.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
and I
yeah,
can see that both ways of being like, we don't need to question, we just need to believe and get be all in there. But I also see that like as a parent, because like, God is our father, like
absolutely.
I want to engage with my children about the why. If they don't understand something, I don't have a problem explaining why we don't dress a certain way or why we don't use certain words or like
Yeah.
I don't have a problem engaging in that conversation. And I would imagine that God does not either, like engaging in that kind of a conversation with us. And that I think death is one of the biggest things that as Christians we question. Like why? Like why did the shooting happen? Why did that, like, why is there so much evil? Why is there natural, like all these deaths, And even though we know death is a part of life,
Yes, I
it
do.
doesn't, when you get in it, that does not matter anymore. Like, it doesn't
Right.
matter that it's natural. Like,
Yes.
it's so painful.
Yes. Is there any verse when you were going through your grief that helped you travel through the darkest moments? Do you have any Bible
Well, okay.
verse?
Yes, but a lot of verse is.
All
So
right.
I am not going to read this all, but I clung to Romans 8 almost like I read it as it was, but I also like it was almost like a meditation or an affirmation almost. Like I wanted to be like one with this. I would put it on audio and I would listen to it. I would read it because I mean, Romans period, but
Yeah.
Romans 8:18. was one that I was like, I don't understand this, but I'm gonna trust it and really lean into it because things were so bad and so dark. But it says, "For I consider that the sufferings of this present time, which right now, what are you going through, are not worthy to be compared with the glory which shall be revealed in us." So, like you're in this moment of deep grief. Even maybe to the point of not wanting to live anymore, maybe even wanting to take your life. And that's as extreme as we can get, right? I feel like
Right,
that's about as
absolutely.
bad as it can
Mm-hmm.
get.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And so the sufferings of this present time are this bad, but just as bad as these sufferings are, it can't compare with how good things are going to be later. And so like it surpasses my understanding of how good things are. Like I'm thinking about wonderful things. Like when we adopted our kids, that was so wonderful. I can't imagine anything better than that. Or certain vacations or certain conversations with people that were just so rich. And like even as good as those things were, they're what we have to experience later is nothing we can even there's no comparison to the
Right.
deepness of this pain that we're feeling. And even though I can't understand that, I can get excited about it. And I did. I was like, okay, so like I see that like, life here is like this long compared to
Absolutely.
eternity,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
And so I leaned into that so hard. And then another one was Romans 5 and no just Romans 5:3, just knowing that like there's glory in tribulation and that like God is building something in our suffering. We can't see it when we're in it. So if somebody's listening today and they're in that deep suffering, like the thought that you're going to do something miraculous with your suffering is almost incomprehensible. But we can look at scripture and know that God turns like we glory in tribulations. And it says it produces perseverance and character and hope. And it's like you can, in your deep grief, at least see that, like, this isn't new. The Bible talks about this. You're going to get through it. And not only are you going to get through it, but you're going to get through it, and some really amazing things are going to happen. And if you can just lean into that just a little bit, like, it might give you enough to get through another day, but there are good things coming for us. I believe there's good things that are coming for us here on earth and in eternity. Like there's good ahead, and we can as Christians, we can get excited about that.
Yes, yes, yes. That's so true. So, so how do you, in your work that you do with is both women and men or just women and
Primarily women.
okay. What advice do you give them when they're wrestling with the anger towards God in the midst of their loss?
I think that we have to, and I teach a program that's evidence based, and so it's scientifically proven to work. And we get to really dissect what loss has looked like for you. We get to pinpoint that moment that a lot of people feel like God betrayed them, God left them, which we can, God never left you. Like God never leaves you. So but you can't tell that to somebody that's grieving. Like
No,
that's
oh
not,
no,
you wouldn't,
you're
that
not.
would never be my approach.
Yeah,
But just to clarify, God doesn't leave us, but we can choose to walk away from him. But what was the point that you felt that this betrayal happened? And I really work with women to heal their relationships with God because, like I mentioned earlier, there's nothing like death to make us question faith and to question God because it's the most painful thing we can experience here.
yes,
And so we go back and I think a lot of the problem is their communication with God stops. There are thoughts like, why do you do this? Like, why would you do this to me? Like, I love you. I follow you. I raised my kids to love you. And then you did X, Y, and Z. Like, how could you do this to me? But the communication with God stops. They stop talking to God. And a big part of what I do is I help people put words to what they're feeling. And so, if you worked with me, we would get really deep in that. But in our short time here today, it would sound something like, God, when you took my son from me, it made me feel angry, made me frustrated. I felt like you betrayed me. And then we get to choose what the and is. And I choose to not carry the burden of that anymore. And I choose to not hold that against you anymore. Or I forgive you for that, if that's true. And so we get to really give words to things that they haven't been able to give words to before. And then communicating them out loud, and really working to mend that relationship because God's there, He's in that. And sometimes I feel like there just needs to be somebody that's like, hey, I'm going to hold your hand and walk you through this. Just like we lead others to Christ, we can lead others back to Christ. And it's a similar situation, except for in this case, you're dealing with a broken heart, and it's a lot of vulnerability, a lot of sadness, and it needs to be very structurally sound in the way that you do it because we can
Right.
hurt. We don't want to dismiss. We don't want to hurt further. So it's a very um, careful, calculated process.
So how do you hold space for other person's grief when you still have yours dealing with? How do you do that?
I think that I think that changes for me because as you know, like grief ebbs and flows. Like sometimes it's so
Yes.
big and some days it's like, where is it? Like, why am I not sad? Like, was something wrong with me that I'm not sad today? So I think it for me, it depends on what phase I'm in. Some days it is really emotionally draining for me. It is. It's like, ooh, like I'm carrying yours and mine. But also I think what I always like go to and where my mind always goes is that there is light and there is hope for this person and I'm helping them get there. And so even though I'm listening to this really terrible thing, like I know that there's hope for this person. And so that's where I always go to is that there is hope. They don't see hope. Like they don't think they're going to get out of this. Like I was there. Like there was no life was just a dark blob.
Hmm.
And but I experienced hope eventually, and then I finally got to start living my life again in a way that was meaningful and valuable. So for me, it's just leaning into the mindset that like this is a chapter, this is a season for this person, but it also gives me strength and encouragement knowing that I'm getting to be a part of that, and that just a lot of inspiration on that they're taking the steps to heal. Because that really gets me when people are really hurting and they're doing nothing about it. They're just
That's true.
hanging out in it.
Yeah, yeah. So, sometimes when people are going through grief, I think it's hard for people, other persons who want to show, that they love them and, they're empathizing with them. But sometimes people don't know what to say. So what's the most important thing that you think people can say or not say to somebody who's grieving?
Yeah, probably don't say anything. I think that is one of the most powerful things people can do is just to not say anything because as humans, we want to fix. We want to make things, especially as women, right? Like
Yes, yes, perfect sense.
we want to fix it. What can I do to fix this for you? And anybody who's been through loss knows that there's nothing anybody can say that's going to fix the problem. I had people tell me pretty regularly, like, you'll find somebody. And I'm like, I'm 0% concerned about me finding somebody when I'm like grieving my current husband or my husband at the time dying. Like,
Yeah.
it like I couldn't be unsad about that and then get excited about another relationship. Like that doesn't even that's not even gosh, it's not even a thing. It gets me worked up. Like they're not the same, okay? You can't replace it. Okay? So that's one thing. But I would say be quiet. If you can handle it, and some people can, some people can't. Can you listen to them? Because as grievers, especially when there's something tragic, like suicide or finding out a diagnosis, or, maybe they found their person and they had to call 911 and they had to do this. Like, are you strong enough to let them talk about it? And let me tell you what that looks like. They tell you, you don't interrupt. You keep your mouth shut while they are talking. You can nod, you can show them like, oh my gosh, like with your hand, like, oh, like I hear you. Like you
Right.
can give them nonverbals, but you don't interrupt them. A lot of times we want to interrupt and ask questions because we're curious about something. Your curiosity is not important right now. You're listening. You listen. They say something like, I just feel so sad. And you're like, of course you do. Of course you do. I was so scared. Of course you were. It makes total sense that you were scared. Like how could you not be scared?
Right.
They say something like I am so tired. And you're like, of course you're tired. Validate, validate, validate.
Right. Right. Right.
That's all you need to say. Validate their feelings, let them tell their story because a griever will tell their story over and over again. It's
Right.
part of their healing.
That's
And
true.
so if you can listen, that's great. If you can't listen, bring them dinner, send them a text and be like, I love you. Like, there's things you can do, but please don't try to say something that's going to make them not hurt over their loss because you don't have that
Right.
power.
Right.
So just let that go. Love them, take them food, do something so they know that you're there. And also, I would also say that I feel like people are really like aware that somebody died until about 2 weeks after the funeral. And then people stop. Like life
Stop.
goes on. Life
Yeah.
goes on. Nobody I when my husband died, I had so many guys come up to me and be like, "I'm going to be here for you guys. I'm going to be here for your kid." Like they wanted to step in and be somebody in our lives because we had lost our person, right?
Hmm.
And honestly, I haven't seen any of them. Like they vanished. And so that is pretty normal, but if you really love somebody, like remember months after, even years after, depending on where they're at, but let them know that you love them and you don't understand, but you know that you still lost them even if it's 10 years.
Yes, that's true. That's so true. Last year my mom passed, and my dad, he when you call him, he talks about it as if it happened yesterday,
Yeah.
So, but as you said, we listen, and we said, Dad, you did everything that was humanly possible. You were a fantastic husband. She knew that you loved her, and we all loved her, and just give him affirmation.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah, perfect.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. 60 years. They were together 60 years, so it's a long history, to just not.
Yeah.
So what's the most surprising lesson you learned about yourself through all of this? What's the most surprising lesson?
That I can think for myself, that I don't need to listen to everybody, that really I know what's best for me.
Hmm.
I know what's best for my kids. I think that especially when we get in marriages and we get in marriages young. So like for me, I went from being under my dad to being under my husband,
Right,
and I felt like I needed somebody there. I have to have somebody there that's like telling me what to do and how to do it because that was kind of my marriage. That was kind
right.
of how it was with
Yes.
my dad. And
Hmm.
so I realized like, oh, I can make decisions. Like it's not ideal that I'm making them alone, but I can. And I have proof that I'm actually making pretty decent decisions. Like my kids are okay and I'm okay and we haven't went bankrupt and I haven't like turned to like drugs and alcohol. Like I have some proof that like I'm doing okay. So it's like there may not be like huge things. It's not like I'm like, a world-renowned
Yes,
speaker and
yes.
evangelist, but like I'm doing some things right. But also like in that same line is that like I have direct line with God. Like I don't have to have somebody on Sunday tell me what to think or how to think about God and who he is. I think preachers are wonderful. I think speakers are wonderful. They can spark curiosity and excitement. And, some of them can really bring the word to life. But at the end of the day, like we don't need them. We need a connection with God, and I was able to discover that. And I will never be thankful that my husband passed away. I will never look at this experience and be like, "Oh, I'm so glad that happened." Like it's been so great because it's been really terrible. But I can look at this experience and be like, "Oh, that was a really amazing thing that came out of this. This was a really amazing thing that came out of this." And think that's what we have to do is be like my relationship with God, not the same. My relationship with God could not be at this level without that extreme suffering. So I can be thankful that I got to connect with him in that way.
Well, gives us a segue to the next question. What does rebuilding from ashes look like to you in the
That was,
practical terms?
yeah. So for me, it's helping others, whether I work face to face with anybody that ever hears me on a podcast or on social media, like that's irrelevant. But the fact that I get the opportunity to share my testimony and share who God is for me and be a light to people. I knew when my husband got diagnosed, I was like, this tragedy is not going to be lost on me. It will not. I'm not going to go through this and just be like, oh, well, it just happened. No, I was like, there's going to be good things come from this. And I
Mhm.
remember listening to the song, he makes beauty from ashes.
Yes,
Like that
yeah.
song, and I listened to it over and over again when my husband was in the hospital, and I'm like, I can't see it. And if you're in your grief, you're in that huge disappointment and sadness, like you can't see it. But once again, like you can lean on it, even though you can't see it for yourself. But for me, it's just getting in front of people and talking about the truth and how God is with us and he is for us and he's not going to forsake us. And even though it feels that way sometimes, like let me be your proof for right now. Like, lean on the fact that there's been somebody that's gone ahead of you that has gone through something really painful, and there is good coming from it. And that is, there's, I could list a whole bunch of things that are good that have come from it. But I have that proof now and love being that proof to other people that, like, I'm no different than you. Like, I don't have favor over you. What he did for me, he can do for you, you know?
Yes, yes. I'm glad you just say that because a lot of persons, especially persons who are, assisting others, some of them have not really gone through the process. So they can't really, yes, they can't really say, I've walked in that shoe that you're walking in. I've been down that road that you're now going. And when you can say that to someone and it's really truly authentic, I think they gravitate more to you because they can see, yes, you went through the same thing I'm going through and you're surviving.
Right.
And you're the living proof. Yeah, yeah. So, what legacy do you hope to leave through your life and your work that you're doing?
I would hope that my biggest hope is that people who have turned from God because of grief are given the tools that they need and the encouragement that they need to come back after loss. I mean, I think that's one of the biggest things. The other one is that my children, when they get married someday and they fall in love and they have this family, they're going to realize that I lost my person during that time. And they're going to get to look back and see an example of what that looked like. And again, have that proof that, like, gosh, bad things can happen, but it doesn't have to, like, completely destroy your faith, your relationships, and
Right.
everything else.
Yes, yes,
And so um, just being an example to people. And like I said, if there's somebody listening that's contemplating taking their life because they don't
yes,
want to deal with the pain of this
yes.
anymore, and they hear me speak and they choose not to that day, what a victory. Like, I mean, do I need
Absolutely.
anything else?
Yes.
Like, that is so much and just so powerful. And I know, like, and I don't know your experience, but I was like almost fantasizing about getting killed in a car wreck for months because I was just like, it would look like an accident if I just crossed the center line. Like, and this would just, and of course, the thought of my kids, I was like, I can't leave them orphaned. Like, I would never do that.
Yes.
But I fantasized so much about it just being over and not having to day after day do that anymore. And so every time I speak, I'm speaking to that person that just doesn't see any future.
So how can persons get in contact you, if you want to give some information to persons that they can contact you and read more about you, your web page, or, whatever you have out there,
Yeah,
social
so
media.
it's NWA, like Northwest Arkansas, NWA Grief Specialists with an S on the end. And you can get my contact information there. I'm also on Facebook as JoBeth Evans, and I recently got remarried, so it's probably going to be JoBeth Polly by the time
Hmm.
Polley
Hmm.
by the time this airs. So you can reach out to me there. I'm on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok as NWA Grief Specialist, and there's some stuff on YouTube as well. So reach out any way that you choose to.
Yeah.
But I do offer like a 30-minute like free consultation with people, and I think that it would be the most valuable 30 minutes of your week because I'm not going to try to convince you to work with me. I am for some people and I'm not for some people. And I know that. And so some people need therapy instead of coaching. Some people need to go to rehab because they've
Right,
turned to other things. I'm not the solution to every problem, but I
right.
think that within 30 minutes, I could give you a really good idea of a direction that you need to go. And I hope people take advantage of that. And you can book that once you reach out to me.
Well, what I'll ask you to do, if you could send me the information, I will be able, or to contact you, I will be able to put that in the podcast narrative
Yeah.
that they can, yeah, get in touch with you. So, if someone, is walking through the valley of grief, remember that they're not alone, and their story isn't over. Grief may shake the foundation of your life, but it can also serve as the birthplace of profound in transformation. So together we can create a space where sorrow and joy coexist, where healing is possible, and where God's goodness shines through even the darkest moment. So I thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I
All right.
appreciate it.
All right.